Every weekend, UFC fighters step into the octagon and risk everything: their bodies, their health, and their futures. They put on a show for millions of fans around the world, and the UFC makes hundreds of millions off it. But here's the uncomfortable truth: most UFC fighters are seriously underpaid. Let's break down exactly why that is. First, the revenue split. In most major sports like the NBA, NFL, or MLB, athletes receive nearly 50% of the total revenue their leagues bring in. In the UFC, fighters only get about 15 to 20%. That means the organization and its owners are keeping the overwhelming majority of the money, while the fighters, the ones actually putting their health on the line, get scraps in comparison. So why don't UFC fighters demand more? Simple, they don't have a union. In every other major sport, players have a union that negotiates collective bargaining agreements, setting minimum salaries, benefits, and protections. UFC fighters are on their own. No union, no collective power, just individual contracts stacked heavily in the UFC's favor. And those contracts? They're brutal. Many include restrictive clauses that tie fighters to the UFC for years, with no option to leave. If you win a title, the UFC can automatically extend your deal through the Champions Clause, whether you like it or not. Fighters can't take bouts elsewhere, can't freely test the market. Even if a fighter wants to leave for better pay, where would they go? Yes, there are other promotions like Bellator, PFL, and one, but none of them offer the global platform the UFC does. The UFC is still the top of the food chain. That gives them massive leverage. Fighters stay for the spotlight, even if the paycheck doesn't match the performance. And let's talk about the expenses. Fighters don't just show up and fight. They pay for training camps, coaches, nutritionists, gym time, management, all out of pocket. By the time the fight is over, a huge chunk of their purse is gone. A fighter making $100,000 might take home less than half of that. And since the UFC introduced exclusive sponsorship deals, fighters can't wear their own sponsors in the octagon anymore, another major income stream cut off. Worst of all, when fighters speak out about pay, they often get punished. They get fewer fight offers, are pushed down the card, or even get cut. Just ask former champions like Francis Ngannou, who had to walk away from the UFC entirely just to gain some control over his own career. The UFC has built a global empire off the backs of its fighters. They get the knockouts, they take the damage, they carry the brand. But until there's a fighters union or real competition that forces the UFC to change, most of them will continue to be underpaid and overworked no matter how many wins they rack up. If you think that needs to change, hit like, share this video, and drop a comment. Let's keep the pressure on, because fighters deserve better.